My wife said she was too tired for intimacy for months. Then I caught her sneaking out to meet my own boss. I'm a 36-year-old man, and until recently, I thought I had a decent marriage. My wife, Emily, and I had been together for 10 years, married for 7. We had our ups and downs like anyone else, but for most of our marriage, I thought we were solid. Then, about 6 months ago, she started changing. First, it was the little things. She stopped holding my hand when we watched TV. She started going to bed earlier, claiming she was exhausted. Every time I tried to initiate anything intimate, she pulled away with excuses: stress at work, headaches, hormones. At first, I believed her. I even felt guilty, like maybe I was being selfish for wanting closeness when she clearly wasn't in the mood. But as the weeks turned into months, the excuses piled up. I'd reach out to hug her, and she'd tense. I'd try to kiss her, and she'd turn her face. At night, she'd roll to the far edge of the bed and scroll on her phone until I fell asleep. It got to the point where I started wondering if I was unattractive, if maybe I'd let myself go, if she simply didn't love me anymore. One night, I decided to surprise her. I cooked her favorite meal, bought a bottle of wine, and set up candles in the living room. She came home, took one look, and forced a smile. "This is sweet, but I'm just too tired tonight." She went upstairs and shut the bedroom door while I sat there staring at untouched food. That's when I knew something was wrong. Not just stress, not just tiredness, something deeper. I started paying attention. She began working late, more often, leaving her phone face down whenever I walked into the room. She changed her passcode for the first time in years. She suddenly bought new lingerie, stuff I never saw her wear. Then one night, around midnight, I woke up and realized she wasn't in bed. I checked the house, empty. Her shoes were gone, her car missing. My chest tightened. I waited by the window until, around 2 a.m. her headlights pulled into the driveway. She crept inside, trying to be quiet, but I was waiting on the couch. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. She froze, deer in the headlights, before muttering, "Just couldn't sleep. Went for a drive." At 2 a.m. dressed like she was going to a date. My gut screamed the truth. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. While she was in the shower, I checked her phone. She'd forgotten to log out of her email, and that's where I saw it. An entire thread of messages. Not with some random stranger. Not with an old flame. With my boss. When I saw the sender's name in her inbox, my stomach dropped so hard I thought I was going to throw up. It wasn't just anyone. It wasn't some faceless guy from Tinder or a forgotten ex. It was him. David. My boss. The man who'd given me my job. The one I had to see almost every single day. The one I depended on for promotions, raises, and my livelihood. The subject lines alone were enough to send my head spinning. "Last night was amazing. Next time we'll be more careful. He doesn't suspect a thing, right?" I opened the first one with shaking hands. The words blurred as my eyes darted across the screen. Emily was writing to him like a giddy teenager. Paragraphs about how she felt alive again, how he made her feel seen, how she couldn't stand the idea of going back to a cold bed. That cold bed was our bed. The one I'd been lying in alone while she was sneaking out to be with him. The emails went back months. Weeks of planning, work dinners that were really hotel meetups. Secret lunches that explained why she always came home smelling like perfume instead of food. Even an exchange about me. One line burned into my brain like acid. "Don't worry, he'll never find out. He still thinks I'm distressed for intimacy." Honestly, it's the perfect cover. I dropped the phone. My vision tunneled, my ears rang, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. She was mocking me with the man who signed my paychecks. I sat there for a long time, frozen, while the shower ran upstairs. Part of me wanted to storm into the bathroom, throw her phone in her face, scream until the neighbors called the cops. But another part of me, the quieter, colder part, told me not to. Not yet. Instead, I forwarded every single email to myself, then printed them at work the next day on the office printer. When no one was around. 50 pages of filth. Their private jokes. Their little nicknames. Plans to sneak away for a conference. That was really just an excuse for a weekend together. And the kicker. They'd used company travel funds to cover at least one of their rendezvous. Now it wasn't just personal. It was professional. If anyone in HR saw those receipts, David's career would go up in flames. That night, I tried to look at Emily the way I used to, and I couldn't. Every move she made was fake. Every smile, every laugh. It all looked like theater now. I caught myself analyzing the way she touched my shoulder while passing behind me in the kitchen. Was she doing it out of habit, or to keep up appearances? I didn't confront her right away. I wanted more. I installed a small GPS tracker in her car. Cheap, easy, discreet. Within a week, I had confirmation. Every time she worked late, her car ended up parked at a hotel off the highway, or, once, right outside my boss' condo. I felt like I was living in someone else's life. Going to work, sitting across the table from David during meetings, listening to him talk about quarterly reports, while knowing he was sleeping with my wife. I wanted to punch him, break his nose, ruin him on the spot. But I swallowed it, day after day, because I was building something bigger. The last straw came on a Thursday night. Emily had kissed me on the cheek, said she was going to bed early, then snuck out 30 minutes later thinking I was asleep. I followed her. She drove straight to David's place. I sat in my car across the street, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, and watched her walk into his building like she belonged there. That image is burned into my memory, my wife disappearing into my boss' apartment at midnight. When she finally came home hours later, I was waiting on the couch again. "Where were you?" I asked. She froze. "Just like last time. I told you, I couldn't sleep, so I went for a drive." And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was lying so easily, so smoothly, that I didn't even recognize the woman standing in front of me. And if she thought I was going to keep pretending I believed her, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. After that night, when she looked me in the eye, and fed me the same recycled lie about just going for a drive, something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not with a scream, or a punch to the wall. No, it was a quiet snap. The kind that comes when you stop begging for answers and start planning for war. I knew two things. 1. I could never trust Emily again. 2. David wasn't just some random guy I could cut out of my life. He was my boss, and the power he held over me professionally made this betrayal 100 times worse. It wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It was about my career, my dignity, my future. So I started planning. The first thing I did was go through all the emails again, this time with a highlighter. Anything that mentioned company funds, work hours, or business trips got marked. Emily and David weren't just sneaking around, they were using his expense account to cover meals and hotels, even filing fake receipts for client dinners. I had them both, not just on adultery, but on fraud. Next, I backed everything up on multiple flash drives and a cloud account under a fake name. If either of them caught on and tried to delete the evidence, it wouldn't matter. Then, I played the part of the clueless husband. At home, I was polite but distant. At work, I laughed at David's jokes, nodded in meetings, and even stayed late to finish reports he didn't want to touch. If he suspected I knew anything, he didn't show it. But behind that mask, I was cataloging every move they made. One Friday night, I followed Emily again. She claimed she was having a girls' night at her friend's apartment. My tracker showed her car parked right outside the Marriott. I walked into the lobby, heart pounding, and there they were, Emily and David, checking in at the front desk. My wife in a red dress I'd never seen before, her hand brushing his arm like it was second nature. I snapped photos from across the lobby, not grainy shots from a distance, but clear, undeniable evidence. Her hand in his arm around her waist, them walking toward the elevators with matching smiles. I walked out before they saw me. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness anymore, from anticipation, because now I had everything I needed. The next step was figuring out how to use it. Exposing them privately wouldn't be enough. If I confronted them one-on-one, they'd spin it, gaslight me, maybe even make me look crazy. No, I needed to do this in a way that destroyed their lies completely, all at once, with witnesses. That's when the perfect opportunity landed in my lap. Our company's quarterly review meeting. All the department heads, HR, even upper management would be there. David would be giving his usual presentation. Emily had already bragged she was too busy with work that day to come home early. I knew exactly where she'd be, probably waiting for him afterward. I spent that weekend preparing. I printed out a packet for every member of upper management, not just the affair evidence, but the fraudulent expense reports tied to their little escapades. Each packet had a cover sheet that said simply, "To whom it may concern, this is what your manager has been doing with company funds." On the day of the meeting, I dressed sharp, tie perfectly knotted, shoes polished. I walked into that conference room calm as a man carrying a loaded weapon, not of violence, but of truth. When David started speaking, I waited. He clicked through his slides about profit margins and productivity, smiling like the king of the room. And when he paused to take questions, I stood up. "I have one," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "How do you justify billing hotel stays and dinners with my wife as company expenses?" The room went dead silent. David froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. That's when I placed the packets on the table, one in front of every executive. 50 pages of damning evidence. neatly stapled and highlighted. The room erupted in whispers, then gasps, then sharp voices. HR immediately started flipping through the documents. One of the executives demanded, "Is this true?" David stammered, red-faced, trying to come up with an excuse. But the photos were right there. The receipts, the emails, the proof that he'd not only betrayed his employee, but stolen from the company to do it. I didn't even look at him again. I just said, "I'll be in my office if you need me," and walked out. By the time I got home that evening, David had been escorted out of the building. Emily was waiting for me, frantic, her phone buzzing with missed calls. She'd clearly heard. "What did you do?" she screamed the second I walked in. I stared at her coldly. "I told the truth. That's all I did. And now, you can pack your things." Her face crumpled, but I felt nothing. No guilt. No regret. Just the sharp relief of finally taking back control. And I knew the fallout had only just begun. When I told Emily to pack her things, the look on her face was something I'll never forget. It wasn't sadness or even shock. It was fear. Not fear of losing me, but fear of losing the cushy, safe little life she'd been balancing between me and David. She started crying instantly, throwing herself into one of those frantic performances I'd seen 100 times before when she wanted to win an argument. "Please, just let me explain. It wasn't what you think. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't mean for it to go this far, Emily. It went on for months. You drained every ounce of intimacy out of our marriage just so you could sneak out at night and screw my boss. You meant every bit of it." She shook her head violently, tears streaking her face. "It wasn't serious. It was just, I felt invisible. He noticed me, and you felt invisible." I cut her off, my voice rising. "You don't get to play the victim here. You weren't invisible. You were lying to me, to everyone." She dropped to her knees in the living room, grabbing my hand. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can rebuild." I yanked my hand away. "There is no we anymore. You didn't just cheat. You humiliated me in front of my entire company. You ruined my career by dragging him into this." And that was the truth. Even though David had been fired, my name was now tangled in whispers and side eyes. Everyone at work knew I was the guy whose wife slept with the boss. I'd won in the sense that he was gone, but I'd lost too, because gossip doesn't care about justice. It only cares about the story. Over the next few days, the fallout spread like wildfire. Emily tried calling me from blocked numbers, sending long emails filled with apologies and promises. She even showed up at my office once, standing in the lobby in tears until security asked her to leave. Meanwhile, my coworkers avoided eye contact. Some of them were supportive behind closed doors, telling me I'd done the right thing. But others, I could hear the whispers as I walked past. "That's him. Imagine finding out like that." One guy even joked, when he thought I was out of earshot, "No wonder she was tired." That one cut deep. At home, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with family drama. My mother-in-law called, furious that I'd embarrassed her daughter. "You could have handled this privately," she scolded. "Now everyone knows her business." I snapped back. "She made it everyone's business when she slept with my boss. Don't call me again." I hung up before she could respond. My own parents were quieter. My dad just said, "Son, I'm proud you stood up for yourself. But be careful. People like her don't go down without trying to drag you with them." He was right. Because a week later, Emily pulled her most desperate move yet. She showed up at my apartment building with a suitcase, begging the doorman to let her in. When he refused, she sat on the curb outside for hours, crying loudly enough for neighbors to notice. One of them texted me, "Hey, your wife's outside making a scene. Want me to call the cops?" I went down there myself. She stood up the second she saw me, eyes wild. "Please, I have nowhere else to go." David cut me off. "My friends won't talk to me. You're all I have left." Her mascara was running, her voice breaking, but I felt nothing, just a cold wall where love used to be. "You made your choices, Emily," I said quietly. "You don't get to come back here because you burned every other bridge." She tried to step forward, but I held up my hand. "Leave now. If you don't, I'll call the police." For a second, I thought she might actually collapse right there on the sidewalk. But then she grabbed her suitcase, muttered something I couldn't make out, and walked away. I stood there watching until she disappeared around the corner. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't angry. I was free. But freedom had a price, and I was only just starting to understand how high it really was. After Emily walked away with her suitcase that night, I thought maybe, just maybe, the storm had passed. But I underestimated her. A person who builds their life on lies doesn't just accept defeat. They thrash. They claw. They try to drag everyone down with them. And Emily was no exception. 2 days later, I got an email from HR. Subject line, We need to discuss recent concerns. My stomach sank as I clicked it open. Inside was a brief message saying they'd received a formal complaint about me and wanted to schedule a meeting. I didn't have to guess where it came from. Sure enough, when I sat down across from the HR manager, she cleared her throat and said, "Your wife, well, your estranged wife, has alleged that you've been creating a hostile work environment by weaponizing her personal life against her." I laughed. Actually laughed, right there in the meeting. Weaponizing? She was sleeping with my boss. I presented proof of fraudulent expenses to protect the company. That's not weaponizing, that's the truth. The HR manager sighed. She already knew. The evidence was airtight. David was gone, and no one could undo that. But Emily had tried one last Hail Mary, painting me as the villain. The HR manager closed her folder and said, "Don't worry, this isn't going anywhere. Just be careful, she's trying to make noise." That night, I got another message, this time from one of Emily's former friends. "She's telling people you ruined her life out of spite, that she only cheated because you were cold, controlling, and never home." I didn't even bother replying. Let her spin whatever fairytale she wanted. The truth was already out there, and the people who mattered knew it. But here's the thing about scandal. It doesn't just stain the guilty, it splashes on everyone nearby. At work, the whispers didn't stop. Even though David was the one who broke company rules, my name stayed attached to the drama. Some people looked at me with pity, others with curiosity, and a few with that smug expression that said, "I'd never let that happen to me." I realized I couldn't stay there forever. The company was tainted for me now, every hallway a reminder, every boardroom a memory of the moment I detonated my marriage and career at once. So I handed in my notice. My manager, one of the few who actually respected what I'd done, shook my hand and said, "You did the right thing. Don't ever think otherwise." Walking out of that building for the last time, I felt oddly calm, like I'd finally stepped out of a burning house I'd been living in for years without realizing it was on fire. As for Emily, she kept spiraling. Paul, the new girlfriend's name I'll never forget, got that restraining order after Emily tried showing up at their place. She lost her apartment when she couldn't keep up with rent. Her social circle evaporated. Even her own family grew tired of defending her when she kept lashing out at anyone who didn't take her side. One night, months later, I got a single text from an unknown number. It just said, "I'm sorry, I ruined everything. Please forgive me." I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Today, my life is quieter, smaller, maybe, but mine. I rent a modest place. I got a new job at a smaller firm, where no one knows me as the guy whose wife slept with the boss. I've started running in the mornings. Just me and the pavement and the silence. Sometimes, people ask if I'd ever consider forgiving her. The truth, forgiveness isn't even the point anymore. She doesn't get to take up space in my mind. She wanted me invisible. Now she's the one who vanished. And maybe that's the only closure I'll ever get. But late at night, when I think back to those months of distance, the nights she rolled to the far side of the bed, the way she smiled at her phone instead of me, I can't help but wonder if there were signs even earlier, if I ignored things I shouldn't have. I'll never know. What I do know is this: betrayal doesn't just change the way you see someone, it changes the way you see yourself. And I'm still figuring out who I am without the weight of her lies. Maybe stronger, maybe colder, I don't know. Follow me for more stories.